All right, folks. Hello and welcome back to online English class. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're going to be finishing up OTN 5, all right, which analyzes Part 2, chapters 4 through 8, in which Winston is essentially expanding his rebellion against the totalitarian control of the party by developing his relationship with Julia in this kind of intimate, private space. Mr. Charrington's room becomes a kind of home for them, a piece of private property in which they can pursue a blessed life apart from the control of the party. Okay, in our next section is going to analyze the significance of Winston's relationship or connection with O'Brien, all right, which continues to expand Winston's rebellion outward, all right, making it increasingly social in nature, all right? Before we do that, let's talk about the top of the week announcements, all right? So first and foremost, you need to make sure that you are continuing to perform your discussion grade duties, all right? Leave a question, a summary, or a reflection on what was discussed. Many of you are doing an excellent job of that, all right? Over and above what I hoped or expected, all right? So just been very delighted by that. Some of you guys, your engagement has been very inauthentic, okay? When I asked for a summary of the content, right, and your summary is Winston is trying to be free. Okay, well, that's obviously the dominant theme of every single thing that Winston does throughout the course of the narrative, right? So, obviously your answer to that question would want to be a little more thoughtful, a little more specific. How in these specific scenes or in these specific actions is Winston exploring that concept of freedom and his own autonomy, all right? So make sure that you're being authentically thoughtful here. Beyond that, right, you need to send an email confirming your completion of your reading of Part 2, all right? So you were supposed to complete reading Part 2 by 3 p.m. today. And then throughout the course of this week, you're going to begin reading Part 3, chapters 1 through 3, all right? You can send me that reading check email by next Monday, all right? Aside from that, you need to send me an email confirmation of your completions of OTNs 2, 3, and 4 by 3 p.m. on Wednesday. Okay, so that'll be a tri-weighted homework grade. So pay attention to this, right? Hands, okay? OTNs 2, 3, and 4, all due by 3 p.m. on Wednesday. Make sure that you get that into me, all right? Now, aside from that, just keep up with your OTNs as we continue working on them together. And make sure that you're working on your quarter 4 essay, which will be due from May 18th to May 22nd. That's the last week of school, and that is the last week that you can submit that essay to me. Okay? So let's go ahead and jump back into our 5th OTN, OTN 5, all right? Obviously, we've already conducted our SQ3R for the text that is under our consideration today. Okay, we basically have reviewed the dominant impression that Orwell is getting at in these chapters, in which Winston's rebellion, all right, his internal rebellion, his mind and his heart's rebellion against the authoritarian control of the party begins to be externalized, all right? He begins to incarnate it in his social environment, into the world around him. In other words, Winston, like human beings are instinctively created to do, desires to build a life for himself, an environment for himself that aligns rationally with his value system. All right, he seeks to pursue blessedness, pleasure, happiness that reflects a reasonable understanding of that which is pleasant, that which is delightful, and that which is blessed. All right? That begins in his relationship with Julia and their interactions in the Golden Country, continues in their interactions in Mr. Charrington's room, all right, which is not just one sort of act of defiance like it was at the Golden Country, a one-time thing, one big moment of defiance, but rather a sort of continued, right, domestic, mundane rebellion, all right, that Winston wants to drive toward, okay, and increasingly believes that is his right as a human being. Okay, and this rebellion extends even further outward in Winston's relationship with O'Brien. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn in our text to pages 171, in which, all right, Julia and Winston have been contacted by O'Brien and are being invited into the Brotherhood. All right, a society, a secret society of rebels that actively fight against the control, the dominion of the party. Okay. So first and foremost, right, let's consider the role that O'Brien plays in the narrative. All right, so all the way back in chapter 1, all right, Winston was already thinking very seriously about O'Brien, fantasizing about possibly having a relationship with O'Brien. The two sort of individuals that he focuses on back in chapter 1 is Julia. Okay, are Julia, one, the girl from the fiction department, and number 2, O'Brien. Okay, now obviously Winston's relationship with Julia is romantic in its nature, right? It's more physical in its nature. They're physically attracted to one another. All right, they love one another. Their relationship is more a reflection on what we would call eros love. Okay, a kind of romantic or sexual love that two men and women, principally husbands and wives, share with one another in a kind of covenant committed relationship, right? But that's not the only kind of love, all right, that an individual seeks after, right? Not only do I long for relationship with my wife, but I also long for a relationship with people like Mr. Sly or Mr. Ayton or Dr. Nato, okay, or Mr. DeHaan, right? Men who are like-minded with me, who want to pursue a kind of common understanding of what we believe to be true, what we believe to be good, and try and build a community, right? A school even, right? That reflects that belief system, okay? That's a kind of human instinct that takes the personal and the private and begins to make it the public, the social. It's that same instinct that leads individuals not just to build schools, but to build towns and communities and legal codes, all right, and civilizations, and write documents like constitutions or build nations that bind together people, all right, in relationships that extend far beyond one's home, that extend far beyond Mr. Charrington's shop, right? So Mr. Charrington's shop is this sort of private space where Julia and Winston have a very important or incarnate a very important element of the human spirit, the freedom, all right, to pursue the blessed life together privately. But from that pursuit, from the acknowledgement that is good, that this is what we were created to do, to pursue the good, to pursue the blessed, all right, and that life is better when we are free to do this, and life is worse when we are put in cages and dehumanized and not allowed to pursue happiness and the good, right? Stemming from that understanding, men and women are led into social relationships in which, stemming from that sort of moral ideal that freedom is good and pursuing the blessed life is good, attempt to, right, the age-old graph here, develop kingdoms or societies or nations that illustrate that value system, okay? So basically, Winston's relationship with O'Brien is just an expression of his desire to do that, all right? And so it follows that what is the Brotherhood's mission? Well, first of all, just consider the name, the Brotherhood, right? The name of the organization is an expression of what Winston is longing after. What? Brotherhood, comradeship, right? This is, O'Brien is the literal and symbolic alternative to Big Brother. Okay, Winston emphasizes O'Brien's largeness, like his physical stature, like he's a big guy. Okay, and also O'Brien's intelligence. That O'Brien is just seems smart, like he knows things. Okay, and that kind of gives Winston this important relationship with like a mentor, right? An older brother, a big brother. That is the antithesis or opposite of big brother. A big brother who shares his values. A big brother who shares his longings and dreams of a world in which individuals are free to pursue the good. Okay, as they were created to do. I think of what is called to my mind is my relationship with someone like Dr. Nato. Like he is just kind of like my big brother, both in the faith and also like intellectually. Okay, he's just smarter than me. He's a better teacher than me. He's more articulate than me. He's more persuasive than me. And he's more godly than I am. And so I just look up to him as a kind of bigger brother, as we both sort of seek to build and embody the belief systems that we both freely hold. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. So that's kind of what O'Brien offers to Winston on a basic or personal level. Right? And so on page 171, right, O'Brien invites Winston into his home. He's a member of the inner party, which is to say part of this sort of elite group of leaders of Oceania society, which, again, inspires great hope in Winston. Why? Because there's corruption, right? There's rebellion, even in the very tip-top portions of Oceania society, right? O'Brien, who seems to work at the Ministry of Truth in a really high-up position, also seems to have rejected the principles of INGSOC and the party's doctrines, very similar to Winston. He in that sense is also intellectually and spiritually free, and therefore wants to create a society that reflects that freedom. Okay, and what does O'Brien do? Well, he solidifies Winston's hope that not only can he create a sane life for himself in one room, Mr. Charrington's room, which is really important, but once again, not enough for the human being who has been created to create cultures and societies and communities that reflect those notions of the good. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. And he confirms that there is hope, right? He confirms that Emmanuel Goldstein, which, by the way, the name Emmanuel means God with us. And now, obviously, Emmanuel Goldstein is not like a Messiah, but he is sort of offered up to, or a symbolic messianic figure, okay, someone who is going to redeem the chaos of the broken and dehumanizing world instituted by the party. Emmanuel Goldstein, right? Gold, again, value, okay? Winston looks up with eagerness. They toast together using wine, okay, a kind of beverage that you probably don't like, and if you do, you shouldn't drink it until you're 21, okay? But a drink that is sort of typically associated with sacraments. Okay, so think about the Last Supper, a sort of sacred supper in which the disciples commune with one another and commune with Emmanuel, their God. All right, but also wine. Okay, is associated with a kind of luxurious blessedness, right? Like, for instance, there's a promise in the Old Testament that prophesies a day when every man will have his own vine, okay, so his own grapes, so that he can make wine for himself, and his own fig tree. And figs were a delightful, decadent treat. Okay, in other words, it's a sort of prophecy of this day when all men will live in a society, a kingdom, all right, in which they will have access to the blessed life, to goodness, to sweetness, okay, to richness, all right, to delicious wine and tasty figs, right? So here they sort of toast together with wine in communion as brothers, right? Both operating out of the same belief system, the same understanding of a human being's essential right to pursue the blessed life, to pursue the good according to their own reason, according to a reasonable, rational life, okay? And again, he affirms the reality of the brotherhood and then inducts Winston into it, okay? If we turn over to page 176, all right, O'Brien gives a very important description of the brotherhood. He says the brotherhood cannot be wiped out because it's not an organization in the ordinary sense. Nothing holds it together. Like, in other words, there's not a building that the brotherhood meets in. It's an idea which is indestructible. You can't destroy an idea, okay? You will never have anything to sustain you except that idea, okay? So importantly, right, for Winston, this is very encouraging because the brotherhood, unlike the party, all right, is something that is based on a reasonable idea. It's held together by a belief, by a kind of transcendent truth, all right, that holds all of the faithful members of the brotherhood together, okay? That, once again, inspires him because that idea is real despite what? Despite the fact the party claims to control or exert dominion over reality, okay? This idea is real in spite of them. The party is not, as Winston so desperately is attempting to retrain his mind to believe and to know, indestructible, eternally in control, and importantly, in control of reality. Okay. On page 174, okay, O'Brien gives something even more hopeful to Winston. Okay, even more significant to Winston. Right. He says, "You'll always be fighting in the dark. You'll always be alone. But what you will have is the book." All right. He says he's going to give the book to Winston. Now, the book is a collection of Emmanuel Goldstein's writings. Okay, and these writings, all right, these words, these special, the sacred text almost, right? It's like a Bible for the brotherhood, binds them together, right, and gives them, and is a recorded version of an alternate reality. Okay, it's that confirmation that these rebellious ideas are not just something that are imagined. And not just something that can die when an individual thinker is killed, but rather something solid, something that lasts throughout time, something that therefore cannot be killed and cannot be destroyed, like the idea and the record of that idea, the book, which resonates with and mimics, all right, the motivation that Winston had in the first place for writing his journal. In the same way, the book carries a similar kind of significance or carries out a similar kind of function. It is a record, all right, of the irrational world that the party claims to be rational, all right? You guys tracking that? So on 173, okay, there's this sort of litany, 172 and 173, there's this litany of questions that O'Brien asks to Winston and to Julia, whether or not they're willing to do certain things for the brotherhood, all right? And he asks them all manner of questions. Are you willing to give up your life? Yes. Are you willing to commit murder? Yes. Acts of sabotage that lead to the deaths of innocent people? Yes. Betray your country to foreign powers? Yes. To do all manner of immoral things? Yes. Okay. To change your identity, to harm children, to commit suicide. All of these things that Winston and Julia say yes to, okay? And we'll come back to the significance of this, which this litany of questions becomes more significant later. But importantly, for this moment in Winston's rebellion, when the brotherhood asks Winston if he's prepared to separate himself from Julia and never see her again, Julia says no, and Winston agrees no after a little bit of thought, okay? In other words, right, Julia and Winston's participation in the brotherhood, all right, is an expression of a deeper commitment to their own pursuit of the blessed life, which is sort of can be summarized for them as togetherness, right? Being together. So what they're fighting for, what makes all of this justified, is the opportunity for a future in which individuals like Winston and Julia, but not just Winston and Julia, all men, have the equal opportunity to pursue happiness in reasonable ways according to their belief systems with one another. So when the Brotherhood asked them if they will give that up for the Brotherhood, it is reasonable for them to say no, because this is the thing that they are fighting to protect. So they can't give that away to the organization that they are serving. Okay, does that make sense? All right, they will give their lives away. All right, if it costs them their life, they will, but they will not allow the Brotherhood to separate them so that they cannot love one another. That is a bridge too far for them. Okay, O'Brien says, good, thank you for telling me. It's necessary for us to know everything. Importantly, this does not make them ineligible for membership in the Brotherhood. Okay, it's just a question that illustrates the deepest commitment that Julia and Winston have, which is to their love for one another. Okay, it's their deepest commitment, their love for one another. And it's ultimately what motivates them to join the Brotherhood in the first place. They want to build a world in which other individuals like them are free to experience love. That's why they are willing to fight against the party. Okay? All right. So, ultimately, right, all of this culminates in this very interesting scene in which O'Brien, as Winston is leading, says, "We're going to meet again, if we do meet again," he says. Winston looked up at him. "In the place where there is no darkness," Winston says. Now, why is that significant? Because this is something that, once again, another thing, very much like the Golden Country, that Winston has dreamed of before. Winston has dreamed of this conversation. Now, that's super weird. I don't know if you guys have ever had that kind of experience where you dream something and like it comes to pass. Okay, I haven't, right? It seems to suggest that Winston's dreams are prophetic. And if prophetic, there's got to be some sort of, it's got to be an illustration of this, some kind of like supernatural or transcendent force at work in the world that is organizing and controlling Winston's experiences, that this is somehow like destiny. Okay, and the destiny, Winston's destiny is to, along with O'Brien and along with Julia and along with the Brotherhood, to rectify the world, to redeem this dystopia and turn it back into a place that is a good world for the human spirit, the human heart, and the human mind to exist in. Okay, if not, why are all these dreams coming true? Okay, once again, this is something that should inspire great hope in Winston, because it would seem that there is some kind of transcendent supernatural force on his side. Now, Winston doesn't know what God is, or who God is, or even or what Christianity really is, because he's grown up in an atmosphere in which the Bible has been rewritten, or if not destroyed and outlawed. Christian practice has been destroyed and outlawed. All right, but there seems to be this sort of inherent cosmic order. Okay, this kind of natural order. Okay, that is bringing O'Brien and Winston and Julia back to what they were made to do, redeeming the chaos, okay, and holding things together, right? So there's this strange interaction, okay, this strangely prophetic interaction that occurs, and O'Brien nods in the place where there is no darkness. He said, as though he had recognized the illusion, okay? So again, this sort of air of prophecy hovers over Winston's rebellion, hovers over Winston's attempt to regain his humanity, as if there is a supernatural or transcendent force supporting him, pressing him onward to some destiny. Okay? All right, folks. So again, today what we talked about, just in brief review, is the significance of Winston's relationship with O'Brien. All right, as Winston's rebellion continues to expand ever outward. Okay, so from himself as an individual to him and Julia, to him, Julia, O'Brien, Emmanuel Goldstein, and the rest of this network of individuals known as the Brotherhood, okay, who are bound together by a shared belief, okay, in an alternative society free from the dominion of the party, okay? This is obviously a kind of incarnation of Winston's most basic thought crime, began all the way back in chapter 1, and now coming to fruition in his outward life. Okay, what will happen next is the question. All right, have an excellent day.